Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. We are continuing our conversation about leadership, my favorite topic. And I'm sure you've heard me say that before. But if you've been following us, a few weeks ago, we featured a guest who is working on building a cadre of leaders of color in her community. And we talked about what is different about such leadership program and what is she learning. Well, today is part 2 of that show because we have 2 participants who actually went through the program, and we get to hear from them what makes this leadership program so special. Stay tuned.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds. My name is Peta Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good.
Welcome, everyone, to Coffee Time with Masterminds, a 30-minute conversation with and for leaders of mission-based organizations. As I mentioned before, we are continuing our conversation about leadership. Yay! And we want to first welcome our listeners in the U.S., our listeners in Australia, and people from all over the globe. If you are joining us today, please put your name in the comments box and say hi. We love to hear where people are listening from. And I am Cynthia Rojas, one of the co-hosts, and I want to introduce my other co-host, Peta Blakely. Peta, how are you?
Good. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm really good. You know why,
right? It's your favorite topic again.
I could talk about leadership all day. It is something that I truly, truly believe in. And I love to watch people rise to their own leadership. And so it's been very exciting.
I'm learning there's a lot to unpack in this topic.
There is. And today I'm super excited because the leadership program that we talked about a couple of weeks ago with Jackie Downing is a program that I am a part of. And so I got to spend 9 months with our 2 guests, and the transformation is just amazing. So I let's bring them on. So I want to introduce Kamani Sue Williams and Christian Aviles. Okay, there they go. Christian, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You definitely did. Thank you for asking.
Great. That's important. Well, how are you guys?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm going to start with Kamani. What inspired you to apply to this particular leadership program?
My boss, Reverend Todd Foster, politely sent me an email letting me know that I needed to apply. So application was linked and he said, this is something you need to do. And I did it.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome. And one thing that I love about that is, part of leadership is helping others rise to their leadership. Yeah. And so what it shows is the support you have. And I just want to note Jackie Downing, who is the mastermind behind the program, along with her partners at UConn and Field Partners, just gave us a shout out. So she says, excited for today. Jackie Downing from New Haven. Love to Kamani and Christian. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Jackie.
And Christian, how did you come to apply to this program?
So very similar to Kamani, I got an email from my boss, and I think no one has helped me rise to leadership more than my executive director, Julie Greenwood at Squash Haven. And I saw the opportunity. I didn't really initially think I was going to apply. I'd never thought like, I'm going to be a leader or I'm going to rise to a position of leadership. But I think with her encouragement and support, like I was able to go through the application process, and I was really excited. about this particular opportunity with being with other people of color. So that naturally drew me to apply.
Yeah, say a little bit more about that. Like, why this particular program?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, one of the, like, I didn't really see myself as someone who was like, oh, I'm not going to be an executive director or program director, so like, why would I do a program like this? And I think particularly what caught my attention about the program and what piqued my interest was that it was specifically for leaders of color. I think like I had done other professional development workshops on like some of the topics we covered, but like sort of on a smaller scale, and it was with people who did not look like me. And I think I always found those experiences to be intimidating, but also a little bit alienating. And so I think the opportunity to be in a leadership program with people who were going to look like me, who were going to come from communities like the one I grew up in, I think is what served as like the real motivator and the push for me to apply for this program.
Kamani, did you feel a difference in the program, it being targeted for leaders of color?
Absolutely. So for me, it being for leaders of color made a big difference. Once I sort of got the information, I felt very, I felt a little nervous initially, but once I got there and started interacting with everyone, I felt like there were layers of, discomfort that just dissipated. Just because we had a lot of shared experiences and everybody was different, but there were just some things that we understood and could relate to. And so that for me made the program very exciting, not so much in the application phase, but once I was there.
Yeah, I got to see how important it is to come together in a room with people who have shared experiences and be able to talk about it in a safe space. And the program, one of the unique things about this specific program is that at the end of every workshop, we had some time to reflect. And we would talk about what we were learning, but from the lens of a person of color. And that always brought on interesting conversation. So because we do see the world with a different lens. And you're building a network of other leaders that look like us. And this is what's so like great about the program, right? Is that the Community Foundation, UConn, and FRIO partners are bringing together and building a huge network that you get to keep forever. You'll be able, I think I said in the graduation, 12 years from now, you'll be able to call one of your cohort mates and they're always going to be there. So, which is awesome. Awesome. All right.
I want to, spend a little bit more time on the fact that these both Kamani and Christian were, pushed into the program, right? And Christian said, "Oh, I never saw myself as somebody who was going to be an executive director." I think that that's really important, right? That somebody identified this pathway for you. Did that change how you think about yourself and your career and your role?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I would say definitely. I think like I, again, not ever seen myself in that role. And I think part of it, of maybe why I haven't seen myself in that role or didn't see myself in that role before, was because I also didn't see people who looked like me in those roles. And I think that like was really challenging. And so I think I never sort of associated myself with that particular like leadership. But yeah, no, I think like having someone, like having my boss like identify me, like really, I think it did serve as like as an important step of like, oh, maybe I am a leader and maybe people do see leadership qualities in me that I can tap into. And that was really motivating to hear from my boss, who again, like was great at supporting me at every stage of this program. And I was really, really grateful for the opportunity that she encouraged me to apply.
Yeah. I also think that leadership looks differently, right? So Christian, you've lifted leadership as a role, right? But leadership is also a process and it's also action. And so I wonder how you've changed as a result of the program, you and also Kamani. So either one of you can answer that. How have you changed?
I have changed so much since starting this program. I was just, I love my job and I was so excited to be serving my community. But I also was sort of just figuring out life, so to say. And I think this program really highlighted a passion that I have for nonprofits, which I don't know that I knew before. Before I knew I worked at one and I was doing my job and getting to serve people, but now I really love the nonprofit space. I want to be present there. It has changed. I've gone back to school to pursue more education to advance that. So it really has motivated me and given me a lot of confidence and just launched me into a lot more direction in my career as well. So
Wow. That's
This has
awesome.
changed your entire trajectory.
yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Christian?
I totally agree. I think like the trajectory I feel like of my career is now totally different than it was a year and a half ago or a year when I started this program. I think on one level, for example, like I think like I started to become more interested in like strategic planning, in development work, in marketing work and all that stuff, because we covered a lot of those topics in our leadership program. And I think being able to bring those back to my organization, I think like at my weekly meeting with my executive director, I told her like, oh, we just learned about this. We should be doing this at Squash Haven. And I think one of the great things about this program is that we now get to work on a project our second year that we get to design. And that's just been like really exciting to see like myself connected with our organization in a different way because of the lessons that we learned as part of this program.
Yeah, this is another part of the program that is amazing and also unique in its way, is that the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, for Greater New Haven, also provided funding to the organization to support Christian and Kamani and the others to come in and spend time 2 days a month on workshops and learning. And then the program extends to year 2, where the cohort members take on a project with their organization and they get to lead it. So they get to practice a lot of those skills. So I think it just makes the program amazing. Kamani, how's that project going, or is it going to launch soon? How's year 2?
Year 2 for me is starting with a little bit of a delay. And so I got my the evaluation, the CCAT that they helped us set up for my organization. And so now we're launching into reviewing that, and then we'll figure out exactly what kind of change I'm going to get to bring. But my mind has been spinning because I'm so excited. There's so many things that I've said, and some of it is what the program drew out of, like, oh, we should be doing this, or I want to do this. And so it's just nailing it down and seeing what everybody thinks makes sense.
Yeah. And so one thing about leadership is also being able to, Heifetz, who wrote a really famous book about adaptive leadership, talks about being on the balcony or looking at things from 30,000 feet. Right? Leaders are constantly having to do that balance from being on the balcony to going down to the dance floor, which is the exact metaphor that Heifetz uses. And so I wonder, have you been able to bring yourself up to 30,000 feet and look at your organization from that perspective? And how is that different for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what we were doing in this program. I feel like as part of the program, we spent the entire 9 months at 30,000 feet. And I think like every time we brought in like a guest who spoke about a different topic, even like about budgeting or against strategic planning or diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think we were asked to put ourselves in that balcony and see our organization from that balcony. And I think I found that really empowering in terms of like the amount of information we were getting, because they, the guest speakers that we had, like, I think encouraged us to ask questions of ourselves and of our nonprofits that I found like just really incredible. Because again, we got to see it sort of more from like a strategic planning perspective that I just then was able to bring back to my organization. So I think it was really interesting, I think, to be in that balcony because, we're like the people who were in the program, I think we were in direct service, right? We're like doing the work every day, like in the day-to-day of our work. But then this was an opportunity for us to sort of just step back and actually see how we can shape and impact the day-to-day work that we're doing.
Yeah. Kamani, how was it for you? Were you already at 30,000 feet, or did this program help you see it from that lens?
I'm in operations at my organization, so I was supposed to be at 30,000 feet, and I realized maybe I was more at 25 or 20 in certain areas, and it elevated me to be able to say, wait a minute, this is the next step. It also, something that Christian hit on a little bit, really, because there was so much self-reflection required in learning these different things and seeing, you know, how you're serving the community or how your organization is doing in evaluating or whatever it might be. It made me self-reflect a lot. And so in terms of leadership, sometimes it's not just, do you know how to plan or do you know how to have the marketing strategy, but are you integrity-wise, character-wise, the way you're navigating a leader? And that's one place where it really helped develop me as well. And I'm seeing the benefit of that in the relationships with the folks I work with. And I know that that is going to then bring forth the changes and the improvements.
This reminds me of the conversation we had with Forrest a couple weeks ago about, you know, thinking 2 levels up, right? Or 2 levels more senior than where you are in the organization. And the point that he was making was that a lot of times we are so focused on the day-to-day of our jobs that we're not really clear on how our job and our function is fitting into the strategy of the bigger organization, you know, and how we need to build opportunities for people to see from a balcony, even as they're doing their day-to-day jobs.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we had Forrest, who leads a lot of leadership development programming for the state of Connecticut and throughout the colleges, he mentioned this 2 level, and I've never thought about that, right? And his thing is that just thinking about moving 1 level up might be a little short-sighted, and really constantly thinking 2 levels ahead. So really, he's probably at 60,000 feet. But it was a really interesting takeaway, and one that really resonated with me. And, you know, this question, oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. I want to ask, like, what do you see yourself, or where do you see yourself in terms of leadership moving forward? Kamani is smiling. She has something she's thinking.
That's such a big one for live on a Friday morning. But I think what I've gained,
hard-hitting journalism here.
Right. I've gained from the program and just from the experiences that it connected to throughout the year plus so far is just that I definitely do want to rise, you know, in my organization and beyond. You know, what does it look like to kind of create? We have some challenges in Milford that are connected to organizations not being connected enough. And so seeing even beyond just my one organization into like the ecosystem of our area, and how do we connect organization and provide service to people on a level that is seamless. You're not going one place and then you have to, it's just, right. So that's kind of where my brain is headed, and hoping to get into that space as well.
I love that. A relationship builder.
Yeah. Love it. That's really one of the features of these types of programs, right?
Yeah.
Connections and seeing relationships across organizations.
Yeah. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really appreciated about this program that I think helped me see a little bit more was, I think, you know, I'm in the area sort of like of college access and equity and inclusion and education. And I think one of the things that, you know, I think I often found sort of frustrating in like this type of work is that, like, you know, we are doing sort of direct service work, and I'm doing direct service work, and it often feels like more of like a Band-Aid approach or a Band-Aid solution to like this bigger problem of equity. And I think what leadership can afford us, and what this program sort of helped me see, is like, well, let's take what you know at the ground level, right? If you're on the dance floor, let's take what you know about the ground level and put you on the balcony so that you can start designing structures that address the larger issues in the community, as opposed to just like the one, doing one-on-one work with a student, right? Because a student next year might have the same issues with access or lack of access or lack of equity in education. So how do you start building systems that address the root of those problems? And I think I saw this program as sort of launching me into leadership in that field. And I'm really excited about continuing to explore that, not just at Squash Haven, but also in the New Haven community. And sort of like to Kimani's point, like how can we learn to collaborate so that we start addressing these things as like systemic structural things and not just like the day-to-day work of our own nonprofit.
Yeah.
I love that. Jackie must be doing a dance right now.
Right.
Right? This is her.
Like the systems thinking here,
Yes.
right? Not just the individual thinking at a more system level in their organization, but organizations thinking at a system level in their, region or country.
Yes, because Jackie's mission is really to strengthen the nonprofit sector.
Yeah.
And this is one way that she's doing it. She does it in many different ways through the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. She just put a smiley emoji. But she does it in many different ways. And Jackie is all about strengthening. And you guys are proving that. So kudos to Jackie. Yay.
So,
go ahead.
So Kimani and Christian, that you guys were sort of picked for this program. So it might be a little bit of an unfair question, but if you were talking to somebody like you 2 years ago, right, about leadership programs in general or next steps in their career, what advice would you give them? Like, what makes a good fit between a participant and a leadership program or opportunity?
I would definitely encourage them to take the risks, take the step into maybe an environment they're not used to or they're uncomfortable with in theory, because what I found when I did so was that there were people ready to understand, accept, embrace, encourage me. And so I would say you cannot get the things you need if you stay isolated and if you do not get out there. So go, do it. And then come back and tell me how wonderful it was, because it will be.
I love that. Christian, do you have a response?
Yeah, no, totally. So, I mean, I think like with this, like if I were to tell someone, 2 years ago or someone in a similar position that I was in 2 years ago about doing something like this, like I sort of like similar to Kimani, I would encourage them to see themselves in new ways and see themselves in new lights. I think, like I said, I think for me particular, like I never saw myself as a leader, despite I think playing a leadership role in my organization and having led in different ways in my community before. I think like, again, sort of like reimagining what our leadership could look like and reimagining what our roles could look like. And I think encouraging people to sort of like put themselves out there in these positions of leadership and in these programs. Because like Kimani mentioned, I found that like there's a whole community out there that's like really excited about like uplifting us and working with us and supporting us. And I think that's a really exciting part about leadership, is that you don't have to do it alone. Like you're doing it in collaboration with other people. And that's something that I appreciated about this program, and that I think like I would encourage people to lean into, is that like, as you're leaning into leadership, you're not doing it alone. Like you're going to have all this support, and you're going to find at the end of this process that like, you're going to see yourselves in ways that maybe you hadn't seen yourself before. And that's a really exciting and transformative thing professionally, but also personally.
Yeah.
That's so important. We started this show 2 years ago talking about leading through COVID. And one of the things that we saw was leaders were really isolated, right? And that's one of the reasons that we started this show, was like a lot of people were trying to lead their organizations through something nobody had ever seen before. And because they were in charge, a lot, internalizing a lot of stress and, trauma and discomfort. And part of the appeal of this show, we thought, was just to make it clear that everybody was in the same boat. Right? Like, you're not doing it wrong. Nobody knows what they're doing right now. But leadership can be really, really isolating. And so the idea of like creating community across and among leaders is very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. One interesting thing that I want to point out to Christian is you've mentioned not seeing yourself back then as a leader, but what's really interesting is that in the 9 months that we spent together, your viewpoint on things were always amazing. Like the way you see things, and you always gave thoughtful and wonderful feedback. And thank God you went through this program. And thank God you see yourself as a leader, because the way you view the world and the organization and the people you serve was just such a great asset to the organization. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Cynthia, for those wonderful words. I appreciate that.
And so have you guys kept in touch with any of the other cohort mates? Like, have you spent some time over the summer or talked or emailed since the end of the program?
I've joined, we're connected on social media with some folks so I've interacted that way.
Nice. That's important. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, I think sort of in the same way. Like, I think, connecting with people on LinkedIn as is always the first step, right, in the professional world, but also just like starting to connect with folks like on social media and like sort of seeing our folks in this program as like allies in this network, but also just like as friends and confidants that we also have in our corner.
Yeah. And my last point about leadership is, for this show, because we're just talking about leadership forever, but is an important aspect is also helping others rise to their leadership. And so I wonder if you've given that some thought and how you might help others in their pathway toward leadership. I'm still here.
Or what? No, go ahead and address that, and then I've got a follow-on question.
Yeah, I mean, I am so fortunate that I get to work with young people and like, high school students and college students. So like the opportunities to tap into leadership potential in my role are endless, right? I think they're infinite. I think like we have a lot of really creative, powerful, like confident young people in the city of New Haven. And, I get to sort of see them as middle schoolers. I get to see them as high schoolers. I get to see them as college students, as graduate students. I really get to see students over a long period of time. And I'm always encouraging them to pursue positions of leaderships on their campus, at their high schools, right? Like, and even if it's not a formal position of leadership, because I think like that's how we maybe traditionally think of leadership, of thinking like, how can you lead in other ways, right? Like if you're not going to be the captain of your team, like in what other ways can you be a leader? And I think like that's something that I try to infuse actively in my work in youth development, is also leadership development with young people, particularly with young people in New Haven. And so I'm always really inspired and love to see the awesome and incredible things that the young people in our city are doing. And so I'm lucky that I get to do that work every day, like tap into other people's leadership. And it's incredible and it's rewarding.
Nice.
And what would you say to organizations that want to cultivate a next generation of leaders?
I like that. I think that the passion is there. And I think sometimes students just like want an opportunity and want to know like a door, or want like just someone to tell them like, go for it. I think oftentimes what I have found in helping young people tap into leadership is that like, one, maybe they didn't know about an opportunity. And then you tell them about it and they're like, oh, that's amazing. I didn't know about that. Like, I'm going to look into that. Or even just telling them like, I think you should go for that position, or I think like you should go for that thing. And then sort of them thinking like, oh, really? Sort of like in a similar situation to me, like, really? Me? Yeah. Like, that's who you want it to be? But I think then they take it and then they go and like thrive in those positions. And I think that that's something that all organizations can do. It's just like a simple encouragement can go a really long way, particularly for the people of color.
Nice. How about you, Kamani? How will you help facilitate others' leadership pathway?
I see this opportunity as one that I was tremendously blessed to have. And I know that while the Community Foundation and Jackie are doing this great work, it's not yet happening everywhere. And so when I see people who are in a similar position to me, maybe they look like me, or maybe, they're also a young woman at their organization, I always try to speak life into them, encourage them, but also there's some lessons that it took me a long time to learn. And I definitely want to allow my ceiling to be their floor, so that they're skipping past the long haul of figuring out stuff the hard way. And I think that that's something that this program gave me in certain ways. And so I'm just looking for those opportunities and paying attention to give it back to other people younger than me and around me.
That's beautiful.
Love that advice.
That's beautiful. Your ceiling is their floor. We are out of time, but I just have to ask, because cohort 2 is starting next week. Do you have any words for them? Some of them are watching. Do you have any advice or words to impart for cohort 2?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think like with the lessons that you're learning from like the speakers, like bring them back to your organization, but also think about like the ways that you want to bring that to your work in the future. Because I think like, one of the things I love Jackie always saying is that like this program is not necessarily meant to keep you at your organization, but to sort of help you grow even at other organizations. So I think like, think about how these lessons I think can apply to your current work, but also think about like the exciting possibilities that can exist like in other places too, where you might be able to bring that work. And I found that really exciting. And I hope that this next cohort does that as well.
Awesome. Kamani.
As nonprofit leaders or emerging leaders, we do a lot of work for others. We put a lot of care into others. And this program is so that you can be strong. This is your time to get strengthened and recharged so that you can go out and do that service for others, but with your own arsenal of really strong weapons. So take the time you need for you to apply it, to internalize it, ask the questions, whatever it is, make those connections, because you need this for you. This is your one thing for you. Do it full force.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, we want to say thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners, and we'll see you next Friday. Take care.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, everybody.